everyone. My name is Casey Bazay, and I am the author of the upcoming young adult novel called Not Our Summer, as you can see in the frame behind me. It releases on May 11th of this year, so in just about 2.5 months, so actually less than that. So I am super excited about that. I wanted to talk today, though, not about the novel exactly, I'll get to that later, but how I got my book deal. It's one of the most common questions I get from writers and non-writers alike is, how do you get published? How do you get a book deal? I wish I had a simple answer for that. I don't, unfortunately. That's why I decided to go ahead and make this video, though, to kind of explain the process of how you get a book deal. Now, I'm talking about traditional publishing, not self-publishing. So if you are looking to go that route, the self-publishing route, you'll have a different process and probably a much shorter process than if you're going for traditional publishing. So here goes. About 10 years ago, I decided I was going to write a book, and I set my goals pretty high. I decided I wanted to get published by one of the big 5 publishers, which, if you know anything about publishing at all, you know that there are 5, I think they may have combined into 4 now, but 5 big publishers that have a bunch of different imprints. And that is, people who go the traditional route, that's where a lot of them want to go. They want to be able to go through one of these big publishers. Nothing wrong with a small publisher or self-publishing. This is just the goal that I set for myself. So that's what I decided. So step number 1 was getting a book written, and that was the hard part. My first book took about 3 years to write. It had several titles, but it ended up being called The Traveler. That book is still very near and dear to my heart. Maybe one of these days I'll go back to it and try to get it published again. But basically that was the book that taught me how to write and taught me that I could actually write a book and I could get through this process. It also taught me the querying process where you query literary agents. And I went through I think I queried about 150 literary agents with that one. I haven't done that since with my other books, but I was very determined to get that book published. It didn't happen. I had some interest in it, but I learned a whole heck of a lot from writing that book and also querying it. So that was around circa 2014, 2015 by the time I started querying that one. Finally, I realized, okay, I'm not getting anywhere with this one. Let's write another book. So I wrote a second book. It was a middle grade novel called The Evolution of Evie. Again, it's very near and dear to my heart. I'm hoping that one day I can go back to it. I know what I need to fix on it now, but and possibly get that published as well. I wrote that rather quickly, in probably 3 or 4 months. It was quite a bit shorter, and for some reason it was very easy for me to get inside that character's head and write that novel. I wrote it in about 3 or 4 months. Revising and editing takes longer, as most writers will probably tell you. I queried it. I had a lot of interest in it, especially compared to the first book, but none of the agents were willing to take it on. So I moved on, and I wrote a third book called, what was that one called? Seeking Sarah Sterling. Probably my least favorite of all the books I've written, although it's still, I still think it's a good book, but I'm not sure that I will ever pursue publication again with that one. It was more of a learning experience and kind of getting some of my feelings and emotions out maybe through that character. Queried that one, didn't have a lot of success with it. One thing I will say is the first 3 books that I wrote focused heavily on, had horse themes, which is, I'm a freelance writer as well, and I write primarily horse-related articles for magazines, and I blog for several different companies and things like that. So my first 3 books had a lot of horse content in them. which nothing wrong with that. It's just more of a niche thing, a little harder to find an audience for and maybe an agent for. My fourth book, which is the one which is Not Our Summer, which comes out in 2.5 months, like I said, I decided to go a little bit different direction and not, I got this idea for a book for two cousins who don't get along, really don't know each other, but in order to get their inheritance from their recently deceased grandfather, they have to fulfill his bucket list and go some different places around the U.S., and they really don't like each other. There's been a long-standing feud between their mothers, so the difficult part is having to be together for them. So anyways, I'm not going to get into the book itself too much. I'll save that for another video. But anyways, I had a different idea for this. It didn't really relate to horses so much. Now, there is a rodeo in it. They do ride mules in the Grand Canyon, but other than that, there's not a lot of horse content, which surprised some people because they know I write about horses so much. But it's okay to go in a different direction. You don't have to just stick with one thing, I've learned. My fifth book, which is also completed, I'm getting ready to send that to my agent. It doesn't have horses in it either. So it's okay. You can write about anything you want to write about. So how did I get my book deal for Not Our Summer? So as I said, it was the fourth book that I completed. And once you complete one book, you realize that you can do this and you can complete more. It's never easy. I won't say that it gets easier each time. Some books are easier to write than others. Not Our Summer didn't take a really long time for me to write or for me to draft. It was maybe 4 or 5 months. Revising again took longer. I queried it. I queried probably 60, 65 agents with it. I had a lot of interest in it, but nobody, again, was willing to take it on. So I was about to move on and focus on my fifth book, which it's been completed for a couple of years, but I've been revising it. But I decided to enter a Twitter contest called Pit Mad, which you may or may not have heard of. But for the last several years, when I was querying, I've always entered some Twitter contests, and one of them was Pit Mad. It's hashtag, if you want to look it up, hashtag Pit Mad. And it's held 2 or 3 times a year. If you go to pitchwars.org, you can find the dates for Pit Mad. But you basically come up with a short pitch, 1 or 2 sentences. You don't have, a whole lot of character length that you can fit into a tweet. But you come up with a pitch, which you try to kind of encapsulate the gist of your story and make it sound interesting. And when you post it on Pit Mad Day, agents and editors from publishing houses can go through and they can favorite. If they see one they like, they can favorite it, and then they'll usually have instructions on their Twitter page that say, send me a query in the first 50 pages, or send a query in the first 10 pages, whatever they want. So I had success with Pit Mad before as far as getting interest in my other books, and it usually resulted in 2 to 3 different agents favoriting a pitch. And you can pitch, I think, 3. You can put out 3 tweets that day between a certain time period. But on this particular day, this was September 2019, I believe, I put out my usual 3 tweets for Not Our Summer. Like I said, I had kind of finished up querying it. I was getting ready to move on, but I thought, what is it going to hurt to go ahead and pitch Not Our Summer? It actually wasn't called Not Our Summer then. It was called The Bug Collector's Bucket List, which is a little more middle grade-ish sounding, so we changed the title. So I put out my pitches. I had 2 agents and an editor favorite my pitches that day, I think. So I thought, well, it won't hurt to go ahead and query this editor. Well, once I dug in a little bit more and read about where she was from, I realized she wasn't from a small press, which the small press editors are usually the ones that participate in Pit Mad. But she was actually from an imprint of a large press from Hachette. So I decided to go ahead and query the 2 agents and this editor, and I've been doing it long enough. I don't get all hung up. I send the query, I send the email, and I move on. It's still in the back of my mind somewhere. I'm thinking, am I going to hear back from these people? But by that time, I'd been doing it long enough to not be checking my email constantly. So the agents, I think one of them requested the full manuscript, and the editor ended up requesting the full manuscript. It ended up being a no eventually from that agent, but it ended up being a yes from the editor. But that's not, just because she said yes doesn't mean, oh, I have a publishing deal now. It doesn't work like that with the big presses, probably the smaller presses either. So I was thrilled, as you might imagine, when she did say she was interested in pursuing this title. So the next part was she sends it to a team. I can't think of the exact name of the team right now, but just some other people who work for the imprint, and they read over it and see, okay, is this something we're interested in? So I can't remember how long it took, but several weeks, a month or 2 later, ended up being a yes from the team. So acquisitions, I think, is what you call the team. So then it goes to like a final acquisition meeting where the head honcho at the imprint has to decide yes or no. Is this title going to fit with our list? Is it something we really want? So at this point, I was super excited, but I also didn't want to get my hopes up too much because I had dealt with rejection quite a bit, as you might imagine, querying for books over the years. So I was really excited, but I thought it could still be a no. However, it wasn't a no, it was a yes. So I believe I got my offer of publication from Running Press Kids. It was on, I believe, December 20th of 2019. So really it went pretty quickly from the time she requested it in September to getting this offer of publication December 20th. That's actually really quick for the traditional publishing world. Things like that can take months and months and even a year or more sometimes. So that was a very, very exciting day. December 20th, I remember it well because I'm a former teacher, and since I've been home for the last 10 years or so, staying with my kids and writing, I sometimes would take substitute jobs. So I had taken a substitute job at an elementary music class, and I'd been doing that for several weeks. But on that day, I had taken off because it was the last day before Christmas break, and we were getting ready to leave town the next day. And I knew I needed to get some things together and make some plans. We've got a bunch of animals, had to get feed and all of that. So anyways, I had taken off work that day. So I got the email. I was home by myself, but I was like dancing around the kitchen and screaming, and I didn't cry, but I was close to it, I'm sure. So I called my husband at the fire station. I called my parents. I called my best friend, messaged my writer group friends. So I had my offer of publication, which was something I worked for a long time to get. So that doesn't mean I signed the deal. I did not sign the deal that day. But I had an offer, so that was what I'd been striving to do for a long time. So after that, I didn't have an agent yet. So it's actually unusual to be able to get a publishing offer from a big publishing house without having a literary agent. So that is not the norm. It doesn't usually happen that way. But because I went through PitMat and this editor happened to like my book, it worked out for me that way. So she asked, do you have an agent? Are you still trying to get an agent? And I said, yes, I would really like to have an agent. An agent is somebody who manages your writing career in most cases, not just one book, but your whole writing I wouldn't say manages, but they're a partner in your writing career. So usually they're the ones to query editors at big houses and to get you, to land you the deal. But since I had gotten the deal by myself, I still wanted an agent because there are a lot of contracts, there's a lot of legal information you have to go through. So you either want a lawyer who is versed in that kind of thing, or you want an agent to be able to help you navigate through a publishing deal, a publishing contract. So my end goal has always been to get an agent, and I still wanted to do that. So I decided to, I think at that point I had one or two agents who still had the full manuscript out. I let them know I had a publishing offer, and I went ahead and queried several more agents. Now the tough part is that it was Christmas time, and most publishing houses, most agencies and publishing houses, aren't working during that period. They kind of take off for several weeks. So it's a pretty well-known thing in the publishing industry that you don't query during the Christmas holidays. I didn't really have much choice, though, because I only had a few weeks to either try to get an agent to go through this contract with me, or for me to just go and try to do it myself. So I sent out a round of queries. I don't remember how many, maybe 10 or so. Followed up with the agents who still, hadn't gotten back with me with queries or that had my manuscript. I had quite a bit of interest, actually, but I ended up getting, in January, so the following month, I had 2 offers of representation, and I ended up going with Jana Bonikowski, and she's from the Night Agency. And once we had a phone call, I just realized, we have some things in common, and she has some experience, and we just got along, and I thought, I think she'll be a good person to have in my corner. So I signed with Jana in January of 2020, and then she started the process of going through the contract and everything, which takes a while. And then, as you know, COVID hit in early 2020, and that slowed things way down. And part of me really worried that, oh no, is this going to affect my publishing deal? Are they going to cancel? Maybe publishers aren't wanting to publish titles right now during this time. So that was kind of a scary ordeal on top of everything else COVID related. But the good news is that while it did slow things down, everybody was, shifting to working from home and whatnot. It did not affect my publishing contract or my publishing deal. So I ended up signing the deal in, I believe, May of 2020. So it took a while to actually sign the deal. And then I was able to share it with the world and let everyone know that Not Our Summer is coming. And, I've worked through edits with my editor and with past pages where you go through and, you really get nitpicky with the wording and everything and check everything over. And so it's been a lot of work since then, but now I'm on the home stretch, and it comes out, like I said, May 11th of 2021, so almost in 2 months. So anyways, that is how I got my publishing deal. If you have questions, and I know I probably skipped over some things, but if you have questions, feel free to comment below, and I will do my best to answer those. So I hope that you found that informative, and I will see you next time.